You drive past it at night. The lights never turn off. The doors never lock. Somewhere inside, a stranger is losing money on purpose, smiling while they do it. You have probably wondered, at least once, what it would take to be the person on the other side of that transaction. Not the gambler, the owner, the one whose name is on the license, whose vault absorbs the losses and the wins alike. It turns out the real economics behind a casino are far more interesting than you think, and almost nothing about it works the way the movies suggest. Here is the first surprise. You do not build a casino because you love gambling. You build one because you understand math better than almost anyone in the room. Every casino on Earth is, underneath the neon, a very large and very boring insurance company. It collects small guaranteed edges across millions of bets and lets volume do the rest. Blackjack might carry a house edge of around 1%. Slot machines run higher, often somewhere between 4 and 15% depending on the machine and the jurisdiction. Multiply that sliver by tens of thousands of hands a day, across hundreds of machines and dozens of tables, and the sliver becomes a fortune. This is not luck. This is actuarial science wearing a tuxedo. So how does someone actually get in? There are 3 doors, and they lead to very different lives. The first door is commercial licensing. This is the Las Vegas Sands model, the Wynn Resorts model, the Caesars Entertainment model. You apply to a state gaming control board, submit to one of the most invasive background checks in American business, and pay for the privilege of being scrutinized. Application and investigation costs for a serious commercial license commonly run from a few $100,000 into the tens of millions, depending on the state and the scale of the property. Nevada wants to know everything about you. So does New Jersey. So does Pennsylvania, which also happens to tax slot revenue at one of the highest rates in the country. Investigators comb through your finances, your business partners, your old lawsuits, even prior regulatory trouble in other countries. This is not a rubber stamp. This is a multi-year audit of your entire life, and you pay for the audit yourself. The second door is tribal gaming, governed federally under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act rather than state licensing alone. Tribal nations operate casinos on sovereign land under compacts negotiated directly with state governments, which is why you will see massive resort casinos in states that otherwise restrict commercial gambling. This path runs through tribal government and federal law rather than a standard state application, and it has produced some of the largest gaming operations in the country. Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun, both built on tribal land in Connecticut, grew into 2 of the biggest gaming resorts on the entire East Coast this way, without ever going through a state commercial licensing process at all. Before you even reach the licensing stage, though, there is a number that quietly disqualifies almost everyone who dreams about this business: construction cost. A serious integrated resort is not a building. It is a small city with a hotel tower, a convention center, a retail promenade, and a gaming floor, all engineered to move thousands of people at once. Depending on scale and market, a ground-up resort casino can run anywhere from a few $100 million for a modest regional property to several $1 billion for a strip-scale flagship. Almost none of that is funded in cash. It comes from a mix of private equity, real estate investment trusts that specialize in gaming property, and enormous construction debt, all of it underwritten years before a single guest checks in. You are not just applying to be a casino owner. You are applying to be a real estate developer, a hospitality operator, and a bank's counterparty simultaneously before the license is even approved. The third door, quieter but increasingly important, is the digital one. Online casino and sportsbook licenses, sometimes called iGaming licenses, let an operator run games through an app rather than a building. The barrier to entry looks lower on paper. It usually is not. Every game has to be certified by an independent testing lab. Every platform needs security audits. And the tax rates can be brutal. Pennsylvania's iGaming tax on slots sits around 54% of gross gaming revenue, which reshapes the entire business model before you have taken a single bet. Now here is where most people's mental picture of a casino breaks completely. You assume the casino floor is the business. On the Las Vegas Strip today, it is not. Gaming revenue accounts for less than a quarter of what a typical strip resort brings in. The rest comes from hotel rooms, restaurants, nightclubs, retail, resort fees, parking, and shows. The casino floor still generates enormous profit relative to its size, because its costs are comparatively low once the building exists. But the empire around it is what actually pays for the marble floors and the fountains. Compare that to Macau, the largest gambling market on Earth, generating tens of billions of dollars a year in gaming revenue alone. There, the math flips. Properties owned by the same companies that operate on the Strip, like Wynn and Las Vegas Sands, can generate 80% or more of their revenue directly from the tables. Fewer hotel rooms. Less retail. Just an enormous, concentrated gaming floor. Same industry. Same corporate parents in some cases. Completely different business model, because the regulatory environment and the customer base are different. Owning a casino is never one business. It is whichever business the local rules and local culture allow you to build. Let's talk about who you are actually competing against and who you would need to work with. This is not a solo venture. You need slot machine manufacturers, companies like the ones supplying the machines you have seen 100 times without knowing their names. You need a payments and compliance infrastructure to satisfy anti-money laundering law. You need a state gaming control board that can suspend your license at will if you step out of line, and they take that power seriously. You need surveillance and security systems sophisticated enough to catch a card counter or a cheating dealer within minutes. Because the moment word spreads that a casino can be beaten, it gets beaten badly. And you need a marketing and loyalty apparatus that would make a credit card company blush. That loyalty system is worth pausing on, because it explains almost everything else about how casinos treat their best customers. Every rated player is tracked. Average bet size, pace of play, hours at the table, all of it feeds into a number called theoretical loss, or theo, which estimates how much the house statistically expects to win from that player over a session. From that number, the casino decides what to give back. Typically somewhere between 20 and 40% of theoretical loss returns to the player as comps. Free rooms, free meals, show tickets. It looks like generosity. It is actually one of the most precise reinvestment formulas in modern business, calculated down to the individual guest. Think about what that means in practice. A player wagering $100 a hand across 60 hands an hour at a table with a roughly 1% house edge produces a theoretical hourly loss of around $60. That single player might receive somewhere close to $20 an hour back in comp value. Multiply that across an 8-hour session, across hundreds of rated players a night, and you start to see why casino hosts exist as an entire profession. Their job is not hospitality for its own sake. Their job is reinvestment engineering, keeping the highest value players comfortable enough to keep playing, without giving away more than the math allows. This is also why the very top tier of players, the ones casinos call whales, matter so disproportionately to the business. A single high-limit player betting tens of thousands of dollars a hand can move a property's quarterly earnings on their own, for better or worse. Entire private gaming salons, chartered flights, and dedicated hosts exist purely to court a few dozen people worldwide who can single-handedly make or break a casino's results in any given month. It is a strange kind of business where the median customer barely matters and the outlier customer is the whole game. What actually goes wrong in this business? Several things, and they are rarely about a single unlucky night at the tables. Regulatory risk sits at the top. A state can raise gaming taxes, restrict marketing, or tighten background check requirements, and your entire cost structure shifts overnight. You have no say in it. You just absorb it. Concentration risk is next. A property funded largely by debt against a single physical location is extraordinarily vulnerable to anything that keeps people from traveling. A pandemic, a recession, a spike in fuel prices that dent drive and traffic. Casinos carry enormous fixed costs, staff, utilities, debt service, whether or not a single guest walks through the door. Then there is competition from the device already in your pocket. Legal online sports betting and iGaming have pulled meaningful volume away from physical floors, particularly among younger bettors who never developed a habit of driving to a casino in the first place. Operators without a strong digital arm have been losing their best customers to companies built natively for mobile. And there is the ethical weight the industry can never fully escape. A meaningful share of gaming revenue comes from a small percentage of the highest volume players, some of whom show clear signs of problem gambling. Regulators increasingly require responsible gaming programs, self-exclusion lists, and spending limits. These programs cost money, and, if the operator takes them seriously, they reduce revenue from the very players who generate the most of it. That tension between profitability and player welfare never fully goes away, and any credible operator has to sit inside that discomfort permanently rather than resolve it. Labor is its own quiet challenge, too. A large resort casino can employ thousands of people across dealing, security, housekeeping, food service, and surveillance, running every hour of every day of the year. Staffing at that scale, with round-the-clock shifts and heavily regulated gaming positions that each require their own licensing, makes a casino one of the more labor-intensive businesses in hospitality. Payroll and benefits routinely represent one of the single largest line items on the entire property's expense sheet, often rivaling or exceeding the cost of the building's debt service. There is one more piece almost nobody outside the industry thinks about: taxation as an active design constraint, not a background detail. Gaming tax rates vary wildly by state, from single digits in Nevada to over 50% on certain products in Pennsylvania, and that spread genuinely determines where operators choose to expand, how aggressively they price their slot floors, and how much room they have to offer promotions and bonuses. A casino company like Penn Entertainment or Boyd Gaming does not just ask whether a state will let them build. They model the tax rate first, because a high enough gaming tax can turn an otherwise promising market into a property that never clears its debt service. This is part of why so much of the industry's recent growth has clustered in states with friendlier tax structures rather than simply the states with the biggest populations. That same tax sensitivity explains why casino companies lobby state legislatures so aggressively, and why gaming taxes are rarely raised without a fight. A single percentage point shift in a state's gaming tax rate, applied across a property doing hundreds of millions in annual gross gaming revenue, can be worth tens of millions of dollars a year. For an industry running on such thin, carefully modeled margins, that kind of swing is existential rather than incremental. Here is the counterintuitive truth most people never expect. The house edge is not actually the main reason casinos are profitable. Plenty of businesses have thin margins on a single transaction and still fail. What makes a casino work is the same principle that makes an insurance company work. Volume converts a small statistical edge into a predictable, almost boring cash flow. The real skill in casino ownership is not knowing the odds of blackjack. It is operations. Filling 10,000 hotel rooms a night. Keeping restaurant margins healthy. Managing labor costs across a property that never closes. The gambling is almost the easy part. Running a small city that happens to have slot machines in it is the hard part. If you were seriously curious about starting smaller, here is the one concrete thread worth pulling. Most states publish their gaming control board's licensing requirements and fee schedules publicly, along with historical revenue reports broken down by department, gaming, rooms, food and beverage, for every licensed property in the state. Reading just one of those reports will teach you more about how casinos actually make money than any documentary, because you can watch, department by department, exactly where the dollars land and exactly how thin the margin on gambling itself really is compared to everything built around it. So the next time you drive past those lights that never turn off, you will not just see a casino. You will see a hotel operator, a restaurant group, an entertainment company, and an actuarial table, all wearing the same building. The gambling brought you in. Everything else is what actually keeps the lights on.